Well, a couple of days back, I got a message on the application that we use for reporting game problems from the arcade, and the person that reported the problem was the Street Fighter monitor was washed out or looked washed out. So it turns out that the image had no red. The chassis lost all red output. After I went and took a look at it, it was obvious that it had no red, and that's what they meant by washed out. So we have an application where the arcade employees can go on there and say, hey, this game's having this problem, this game's having that problem. And it was reported that the Street Fighter monitor was washed out. Well, after going and looking, it was missing red. And I figured it'd be a good idea to go ahead and make a video on how to troubleshoot missing colors on a K7000, because it's a very common problem on a very common chassis. And it's a very easy thing to figure out. Unlike some of the other newer chassis, like a 7400, 7500, 2000, 5000, and so on, all the chassis that use this RGB encoding chip, or decoding chip, I should say, they're a little bit more tricky because the RGB basically comes directly from the chassis, doesn't go through any real components, and basically just goes right to the neck board. So you have a lot of stuff on the neck board that could go bad. Whereas on this type of chassis, it's a very simpler, very more simple circuit. But the first thing to do whenever you're missing a color, red, green, blue, doesn't matter, you want to verify your wires are good. For the wiring from your board, the edge connector could be dirty, you could have a broken wire, loose connection. You want to verify all your wiring first as the first thing to eliminate. Then you start working on the chassis. So assuming that you have all the wiring is good, in this particular case we're missing red. So you start obviously with the solder joint on the end connection here for the video. In this case, this 7000 has been previously rebuilt and reworked, so I know that there's nothing wrong with the solder joints, but the first thing you'd want to examine is the solder joint on here. If the solder joint is cracked or broken on RGB pins 1, 2, 3, if any of these joints are cracked or broken, that's the most common issue, other than the wiring and things like that. You want to make sure that those joints are not cracked and broken. Assuming that they're not, the next step off of the edge connector here, not an edge connector, the video connection I should say, the first stop off the video connection are these transistors here, Q1, Q2, and Q3 for red, green, and blue. We'll zoom in a bit. So this is for red, this is for green, this is for blue. So now if any of these are bad, that can cause color problems. Now if Q1, for instance, was open, completely open, you wouldn't have any red. If it was shorted, you'd have all red. So you want to make sure you note what your problem is. If it's all red, you could have a shorted transistor. If it's missing red, then you're having an open transistor. So it goes through these transistors, it goes through the bipolar caps, it ends up at IC1. Then it goes out of IC1 through, now there are a bunch of other passive components like resistors and things, but they're never going to fail. Never will it ever be one of these resistors or something like that. It's always going to be a bad solder joint, a bad wiring, a bad transistor, could possibly be a bad bipolar cap. I don't think I've ever actually seen that be the cause. Then it goes through IC1. It could be a bad IC1. Then it comes out of IC1, goes through some other passive components to the harness here, and then it runs directly to the neck board. So you could have bad solder joints, a bad connection, bad wiring, bad transistor, bad bipolar cap, bad IC1, bad connection here, solder joints on the wiring. Then after it ends up at the neck board, you could have bad solder joints at the connection here for the neck board. Then it runs right from the neck board to the transistors, and then it runs through well, we'll call them potentiometers. It runs through the potentiometers. That's what they are. I was going to say rheostat, but it runs through the potentiometers, then it runs through the next socket here. So you could have faulty connections on the wiring that runs from the main board. You could have bad actual control transistors here for RGB. You could have an open, I almost said rheostat again. You can have an open potentiometer. If any of these potentiometers, I should say the cutoff, I should say more specific. If the cutoff pot is broken for the red, green, or blue, you'll have no color. So if, let's say for instance, if the red potentiometer is broken, these are non-standard pots. You know, they mostly look more like this. But if the red, green, or blue cutoff pot is broken, completely cracked in half or busted, you'll lose that color. So that's something to pay attention to as well, especially if you get a chassis that you've had to have shipped to you or shipped to someone else. If the cutoff pots for RGB are cracked and broken, you'll have no color. So that's something to be on the lookout for. No, I lied to you. I completely lied. Hang on. Let's go back. Rewind the editor. Go back and rewind that tape. So it's the drive pot. If the drive pot is broken, is that right? I think, hang on a second. Yes, if the drive pot is cracked and broken. I don't know why I said cut off. This is a non-standard neck board, and usually they're not set up. Usually green's on the outside. Is it? I'm not sure. Hang on a second. I'm confused now. Hang on. Here's a different one with a different neck board. Yeah, blue, red, green. Yeah, I guess so. Well, it's the drive pot, regardless. Yeah, it's the drive pot. If the drive pot is broken, then you'll have no color. So I'm sorry about that confusion there, but it's the drive pot. So inspect the drive pot, make sure it's not cracked or broken. You can check it with a meter or visually, whatever you want to do. Should be fairly obvious. The next thing to verify is that your solder joints on your neck socket are not cracked and broken, because I've seen that before where there's a cracked joint on a color and you lose your color because it's not getting to the tube on the pin. Yeah, and that's about it. I mean, other than obvious things, that's about it. Video input, wiring, edge connector on the board, the transistors, bipolar caps, IC1, wiring harness, solder joints for the wiring harness, broken drive pots, bad solder joints on your neck socket, bad solder joints for your harness that feed the RGB from the main board to the neck board on the back. Then you're pretty much left with the main control transistors. So we'll start by checking the back here. So we're missing red, we know that, and I'll see if I can insert a picture. The picture that they sent to me on the application for the reporting problems, I'll insert that picture right here. Okay, so there's what it looked like. So if we go to our meter here and go to continuity, we can check that we have continuity from here to here. Good. And from the pin to here. Yep, that's good. So that's fine. Then it goes across C1 right here. And then it feeds into Q1. So we'll test Q1 and Q2 and Q3 and compare all the readings. So we'll go to diode mode. And if I recall correctly, it should be, we'll start with the blue. We're testing these three transistors here, Q3, Q2, and Q1. So if we go to, if I recall correctly, we should go on this leg in diode mode. We should get 0.6 voltage drop to each other leg. So here's the top leg. We'll go to the middle. No. Okay, so the top leg is the negative lead. Okay, so negative lead on top leg, middle leg with the red lead on diode mode, we get 0.663, and the bottom leg 0.6. So 0.66 on the bottom and 0.66 in the middle. That's good. Now the green transistor, 0.66 on the top and 0.66 on the bottom. Now the red, 0.66 in the middle and 0.66 on the bottom. So that is apparently good. I know it's not going to be the bipolar cap. It's likely to not be IC1. The next step is it goes through the harness up to the neck board. So it goes directly to here, and then it feeds the red, green, and blue transistors. Now, how do you know which one of these is which? Well, if we look here, we've got red R cutoff, red cutoff. If you follow that, it goes, hang on a second, a red drive. Basically, you just follow the transistor here. So if this is our red transistor, I already know that this is the red one. If you follow the red transistor, the input comes off of this pin, it runs to here, then it runs through the transistor when it's selected to on, and then it comes out here, goes across this jumper. This is a jumper, this guy right here. Then it feeds up to right here, which is the red drive pot. So that means that this transistor is for red, this one's going to be for green, and this one is going to be for blue. So again, like for blue, we can see that this goes, that's this transistor here, which then goes around this way straight to this pot here, which is for our blue drive. So this is our blue transistor, green transistor, and red transistor. So if we go to our blue transistor, I believe positive lead here, negative lead, we should get 0.6 voltage drop to each leg. 0.6 and 0.6. Green, 0.6 and 0.6, and red. Let's do that again. Did I have that in frame? We'll just do it again real quick. 0.6 and 0.6, so there's blue. Green, 0.6 and 0.6. Red, 0.6 and, dead short. So our red transistor is short. I don't know if that's the collector and emitter, or base and emitter, or base collector emitter. I'm not sure if it's PNP or NPN. I never looked into it that much. But there's the cause of our red. Now you would think with a shorted transistor, I guess it says right here, base and emitter are shorted. So we have C and then BE. C, collector, base, emitter. So the base and the emitter are shorted together. Now that results in no color. If we had the collector and the emitter shorted, or the collector and the base shorted, that should result in all of one color. So if you have all, let's say you have all red. Let's say you turn the monitor on and you have a completely red image. All you see is red, but there's no retrace lines. If you see all of one color with no retrace lines, then your transistor is shorted across the collector, either collector and emitter or collector and base, but in this case it's base and emitter, so it's no color. But if you have all of one color, then it's going to be a shorted transistor across the collector and something else. If you have all of one color with no lines, it's the transistor. If you have all of one color with the retrace lines, then it's the gun and the tube. So yeah, if you have all red but you have the retrace lines, the gun is shorted. If you have all red with no retrace lines, the transistor is shorted. It's an easy way to know which one of those it is. So if we yank out, my iron isn't even on, gosh darn it. We're gonna have to yank out this transistor. I do have an extra set. I had it sitting over here in case this was bad. I did not test this beforehand. I figured it was gonna be one of these transistors. Well, the red one specific. I figured it was gonna be a transistor on the neck board. That's what I figured it was gonna be. It was either gonna be this one on the chassis or the one on the neck board, one of the two. So I had these sitting offhand. I don't have any of these. I would have had to have robbed one of these from a donor board. But I figured, in preparation that it was one of these transistors. Well, again, this one, this one. When I say one of these, I meant one of these two, one of these. But it turned out to be this one here is the issue. So I had this set aside just in case, and sure enough, that's the problem. So I'm gonna I'll leave the fan off. I don't want to, it causes vibrations and whatnot on the camera, but we can just zip this out real quick. All right, that puppy is out. Let's grab our component tester here, turn it on, and let's see what this says. Let me straighten these legs out here real quick. And this should not come up. It might come up as a diode. I bet you that comes up as a diode. If it's faulty, it'll come up as a diode. So we'll set this in here. It doesn't matter. We just put it in this way. It doesn't matter which way you put it in. We'll put it in the first three here. Oh, hang on. I hit the button. Yep, diode. Yeah, it doesn't matter which way you put it in here. We'll flip it around the other way. Yeah, see, now it's coming up as something a bit different, but it's coming up as a diode. Now if we put in a good one, if I can get it out of the bag, there we go. Let's put a good one in here. This should come up as a transistor now. There you go, NPN transistor. So, bad transistor. Now, just for the sake of testing, let's go ahead and see if it reads shorted out of circuit. And, yep, 1.1 ohms, 1.0. So, bad transistor. And we'll put a good one in. Set this aside. And over time, they just simply fail. I mean, it's not much you can do. Like any electrical component, it won't last forever. And we gotta open up these holes a bit. There we go. There we go, and there we go. All right, now we need to do some surgery on this. Bend the legs slightly. There we go, just like so. Put this guy in here. And if I can find where my solder went, there it is. Nothing is organized here, that's why it's the amateur channel. All right, and all right. Okay, now we will trim excess and we'll test it now that we have it replaced. Again, positive lead on this leg there, and then we should have 0.6 to each leg. It's still hot, but so it'll go higher as it cools down. But we'll just round up to 0.6, and then here we go, and 0.53, which will go up to 6 eventually. So there we have it. Let's make sure we have continuity to our other spots here, from here to here. Yep, here to here. Yep, and here to here. Done. All right, well, yeah, like I say, this is a very simple circuit to troubleshoot when you're missing a color on a 7000. If you're missing a color on, you know, one of these chassis that has one of these decoding chips, you know, there's the same 3 transistors here. There's the same resistors. There's the same 3 caps, but they're not bipolar. Then it goes through the chip, and it comes out of the chip and goes over to the pots. Then it runs to the transistors. Then it goes to the neck board. So there's a lot more things that could go wrong on a setup like this as opposed to something like this. So, but with all that work done, I guess we'll grab a tube and see if that has fixed it. Put my stuff back away here real quick. I talked about not being organized, but I'm kidding, I'm organized. All right, so I'll grab a tube, we'll hook this up and see if we got red back. Okay, so we're all hooked up to a tube. This is that tube I just rescued and did a tube swap on from the commercial television, so it should be nice and bright and good. Now, of course, this came off of a different tube, so I don't have no idea if the colors are going to be accurate or how it's going to be. It's going to be different for brightness, contrast, colors. It's all going to be different, screen size, position, shape. I'm not worried about that. I'm just worried about if we have red now. So here's the old shorted transistor. New one obviously was installed. So let's turn this on. Everything is set to go. We got anode, neck, yoke, ground, power, video, remote. And we'll cross our fingers here. 1, 2, oh, I should say I got running our Mortal Kombat PCB that likes to lose sync on me intermittently. That's why it's the test board. So, which I've mentioned many times before. But anyway, so here we go. 1, 2, 3. Okay, at least it powers on. And don't know if we have red yet. Got to fix vertical hold here. Yeah, it needs. It's way too tall and it's out of focus. Not too bright, but I'm not worried about any of this. Let's skip past this and should have a seam. Yep. How about that? Well, it's too dark. But let's decrease our vertical size. There we go. And black level contrast is way too high. Turn that down. Black level. Yeah. Let's get past this. Credits. And we have red. Look at that. Looks like garbage, but we need to do some adjustments. But hey, we got our red back. So, yeah. Let's start with black level all the way down, contrast all the way down, screen pot up until we get retrace lines right there, back down till they just go away. Brightness up until the background is no longer black, but I need to move. There we go. So brightness down to roughly there. And that looks pretty good for H position, close enough. Now we can turn up our contrast and brightness a little bit more with contrast. Now we can worry about focus. Roughly. Oh my lord, that's good. All right, and yep, I'd say we're a bit too blue, but that's fine because, like I say, this is different. Let's turn our blue drive down right about there. Green up slightly. And our red drive a little bit. Still a bit too dark. But we're making progress. Fantastic. So, yeah, we had a shorted transistor across the base and the emitter. So there you go. Quick and easy fix. You know, hopefully I explained that well enough for you to understand. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, not too difficult. So I appreciate it, like always. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and stay tuned for more. I'm about to make a video on the rather large cornucopia of spare chassis that I have acquired in the last couple of months. So stay tuned for that. Otherwise, I appreciate it very much. Make sure you comment, throw a like there, and we'll see you next time.